All right, the quotient rule is next. It's obviously a formula that tells you how to do the derivative of a quotient. So let's see how that goes. Now, maybe, like we talked about before, our intuition might suggest that the quotient, the derivative of a quotient, is the quotient of the derivatives. And that's not right at all. We don't want to ever do that, or else we'll get a wrong answer. The formula is more complicated than that. It's like this. It's the derivative of f multiplied by g left alone. It's kind of starting off like the product rule, right? The product rule has a plus sign next, but the quotient rule has a minus sign here. And then this part kind of looks like the product rule as well. We have f left alone times g prime of x, right? Kind of looks like the product rule, except instead of a plus sign, there's a minus sign. But that's not it. It's then all over the bottom is g of x squared. Okay. Notice there's no derivative here in the bottom. Whatever the denominator is here, you just square that and put that in the denominator there. So that's the quotient rule, okay? It's definitely not something you would ever guess to be true, but this is really the formula that will give you the right answers. We have a video that does give the proof of this and shows you how this actually comes up. But if you just want to accept it as true, then that's perfectly fine. So let's just practice this a little bit. Let's say we have the function, I don't know, x squared over x cubed plus 1. And I want to do that derivative, okay? This is definitely a quotient. So think of the top here as f of x. X squared is like f of x. And x cubed plus 1 is like g of x. So let's take this slow and see how this is going to go. Well, it's going to be the derivative of the numerator times the denominator g of x left alone. And then minus, now we're going to leave the numerator alone, x squared, and multiply by the derivative of the denominator. And then the bottom here is the square of x cubed plus 1. So this is this matches up with this, right? That's how I got it. And now it's pretty easy. We just got to simplify. The derivative of x squared is 2x. And x cubed plus 1 minus x squared times the derivative of, what is the derivative of x cubed plus 1? It's 3x squared plus 0. I'll just write 3x squared. And that's still all over x cubed plus 1 squared. Now this can be simplified. I don't want to bother with that right now because all I really want to focus on this video is how to use the quotient rule, okay? Sometimes questions are going to ask you to simplify your answers, and sometimes they'll just say leave them unsimplified. The way you know you're done is when all the prime signs are gone, right? You see right here there's prime symbols, so that means the derivatives hasn't been completed yet. But on this step, all the prime symbols are gone, so we know we're done. And whether you simplify or not depends on what the question says. For this video, like I said, let's just leave it unsimplified and focus on applying the rule since it's brand new and we're just learning it, okay? Let's do another example. Let's say we got, I don't know, root x over sine x. That's a quotient. How do we do the derivative? Well, it's the derivative of the top times the bottom left alone minus the top left alone times the derivative of the bottom, which is cos x. Remember the derivative. Oops, I'm going a little bit fast, aren't I? I'm so used to doing it all in one step, I forgot. I just want to go a little bit slower and just instead of saying the derivative of sine x is cos x right away, I'm just going to write it like this and then do it on the next step. But later on, it's good to, it's just fine if you want to do it all in one step. I'm just going to go slow right now since we're just learning this for the first time. All right, so we have some work to do right here, and we have some work to do right there, and the rest is just going to be recopied. What's the derivative of root x? Well, we've memorized that. It's 1 over 2 root x. And sine x is going to be left alone. And root x is going to be left alone. And what's the derivative of sine x? Well, like I said a second ago, it's cos x. And that's all over sine. How about I write it like this? You know that this expression and this expression are the same, right? We kind of prefer to write it like this just because we don't have to write this extra set of brackets here. But both versions mean the same thing. And this here, I don't want to try to simplify it. We could probably work on it a little bit and get it looking a little bit more nice, but it's perfectly fine unsimplified for right now. Good. Notice there's no more prime symbols here, which tells us we are done the derivative. Okay, let's do, I don't know. How about 3x to the power of 4 minus 5, x plus 1, all over 2, x to the minus 1 minus 7, x to the, I don't know, doesn't matter, minus 3, say. How is this one going to go? How about this? Let's try to do this one a little bit faster, okay? Instead of doing this step here, which is perfectly fine, why don't we try to jump to this step all in one? So what do you have to do? We have to do the derivative of the first one, right? The derivative of this is going to be done by using the sum and difference rules. So in other words, we just do the derivative term by term. What's the derivative of this? 12x cubed minus 5 times the derivative of x, which is 1. So minus 5 times 1, which is just 5. And then plus the derivative of 1, which is 0. And plus 0 doesn't do anything, so I've just completed the derivative of this numerator here, okay? The quotient rule then tells us to multiply by the derivative, the quotient rule tells us to multiply by the derivative of this. Oh, I'm having trouble speaking here. The quotient rule says next just to multiply by this here left alone. Don't do the derivative of it. So that's fine. And then minus. Now we're going to leave this one alone. So 3x to the 4 minus 5x plus 1, just recopy it. And then multiply by the derivative of this denominator. So 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. X to the minus 1 is minus 2. And negative 7 times negative 3 is positive 21. X to the minus 3 minus 1 is minus 4. And then the last thing on the quotient rule says it's all over the denominator squared, right? So 2x inverse minus 7 x to the minus 3 squared. Okay? So that's the derivative in one step. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I think that's enough for this video. We're gonna have a lot of chance to practice this more, but I just wanted to introduce you to that quotient rule formula right here on this video, and that's about it for now. Let's keep going.